Today we are talking about identities, changing identities. Identities is a complex issue, and each of us has multiple identities. I will only be speaking about one identity, which is the professional identity. The professional identity is, we could say, a deep identity. As any identity, it creates a sense of community among people that have it. People of the same profession have a lot of gossip about, and they have a lot of substantial things to talk about. And it's a deep identity because we are not born into a profession. This is acquired, and it is acquired by a long process that requires a lot of work. We call it training. You may have heard that to reach a point where one does something reasonably well in a profession or in activity, you need as a minimum 10,000 hours of training. So calculate what that means. One implication of what I am saying is that a profession, you better, if you are going to spend most hours of the day in a profession, you better earn a living with the profession. And conversely, if you have to earn a living, as most of us, you better have a profession to earn the living with. I'll go back to that towards the end of my talk. But now I go to a case study, which is myself, and my own experience and my own profession. I am an economist. I became an economist because in my youth, I wanted to fix the world. With the years, I am much more jaundiced about changing the world. But I still think that one can use economics, my box of tools, to do valuable things. Which things? Well, in a sense, economics is a second-order profession. We make a living studying and helping other people to make a living. The object of our study is indeed how we collectively and individually make a living. Marshall, a well-known economist, said that we study people in the ordinary businesses of life. I will say those that imply exchange of money, etc. That's basically what we do. There is a bright side to the economics profession, and there is a somber side. I begin by the somber side. What's the somber side? Well, we know our grounding conviction, there's a grounding conviction of the profession that people in their pursuit of happiness, and that's the most important, the pursuit of happiness, face limits. Our dreams may be limitless, but the hard reality is one of limits. And unfortunately, the limits are not the same for everyone. The limits here are more generous than the limits in, say, Mali. And that's something important and to take into account. Historically, the pessimism of economics was well expressed by Reverend Malthus at the end of the 18th century. He wrote a book arguing that it will be impossible for humanity to leave poverty simply because demographic pressure will always overcome any possible progress. If the potentialities were there, the potentialities will be eaten up by the increases of population, and will be poor forever, with a few exceptions of a few rich people. And no wonder that Thomas Carlyle qualified economics, repeat, the books of tools of the economist, as the dismal science. That's an epithet we have had to live ever since. But I want to say that there is also a bright side, and the bright side is that Malthus was dead wrong. What he predicted hasn't happened. The birth rate has gone down. Infant mortality has gone down. This has teach parents all around the world that it is better to invest in quality and not in quantity of children. Therefore, demographic pressure has gone down, and parents and societies have invested in education, and what we call human capital, and that has increased productivity, and that has made many societies much well off. We are not yet there. In my lifetime, I have witnessed something spectacular, which is the emergence of the biggest countries of them all, China, from poverty. And not only China, India, many other well-populated countries that not so much as China, but also on the way. I cannot think of anything more important, I repeat, that has happened in my lifetime. We are not yet there. We are not yet completely there because, well, Africa is behind. It's progressing, but it's behind. Mali is still an extremely poor country. So we could say that in the language of Hobbes, we are still in the area of humanity where the life of man, he didn't say women, but for women it is worse. The life was, let me see if I got it right, the life of woman was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Well, we have the convictions, and that's the bright side of economics, that we can get out of this completely. And that makes us probably the most optimistic, curiously, the less dismal among the social and even the physical scientists these days. We, of course, believe that the world is in danger. We share all the concerns of the ecological movement, but we think that with the use of an unlimited resource, which is knowledge, we can get out of this, and that we can be, let me be very schematic, that it's precisely by becoming rich that we'll be able to save the planet, and that we can save the planet and we can become rich. So these days, we are optimists. How do we economists work? Let me do a parallel with the medical profession. We have patients, as the doctors, the medical doctors have. Our patients are the economists of a municipality, the economists of a country, etc. And those patients get sick. Think of the crisis that started 10 years ago. Then we use our experience and we use our knowledge, which is better now than years ago, in order to do the best we can to restore health. We have a difference, an advantage with respect to the medical doctors, which is our patients never die. Societies are always there. If you allow me, let me make 2 minutes in a lighter mood. The parallel with medical doctors can also go in other ways. We share with medical doctors the characteristic that in casual context we are constantly asked advice. Not about some uncle, something. Well, we ask advice. Which kind of advice are we asked? In what should I invest? How will the rate of exchange of the dollar and the euro evolve, etc. And that's very annoying because we know that we cannot answer these questions properly. If I could answer properly the question of how the rate of exchange between the euro and the dollar will evolve, I will be rich. Well, that's not the case, and so, well, I'm richer than the people in Mali, but I cannot predict that rate of exchange. But it's difficult when you ask to tell, no, I cannot predict, sounds arrogant. So one has to maneuver this for a time. My trick was to answer to the person sitting next to me in an airplane, what he or she will ask, and what do you do? I will say, I do mathematics. And that was a killer of the conversation until one day I found the real mathematician. And then it was very embarrassing. Another time, I met a business friend, and he reaches to me and says, thanks, Andreu, that was phenomenal. Didn't know what the hell he was talking about. What happened? 2 years ago, I asked about the rate of exchange, and you told me that the dollar will go up. And I did not insure. I will never have advised him not to insure. Fortunately, the dollar went up. And so he made money, and I got some credit. Well, to conclude this type of comparisons, let me mention another well-known economist of the 20th century, John Maynard Keynes, for some the most important economist of the 20th century. He wrote a very nice article in 1930, a speech, actually he gave it in Madrid, called The Economic Prospects of Our Grandchildren, where in a very bad moment of the economy, he made optimistic predictions, and I am doing today, I'm adopting also the optimistic mood, and he talked more or less of our time, and he expressed the desire that things will progress, economic welfare will go up, equality will be better, people will work few hours a week, and that he was wrong, and that the task of the economist will become an easy one, will not be crucial. Economists will do maintenance work, will apply routines and protocols, and the proper comparison, he said, with lack of respect for another profession, it was a dentist. So not a medical doctor, but a dentist. Fine, I don't care. Toothache is also very important. If you are fit normally, if you are not hungry, toothache is important. What I'm sure is that we as economists can do things which are good for humanity. And I had been now particularly pompous because what I want to stress is that people in a profession, in my case economists, are proud of that profession. Live that profession intensely, which means that being a member of a profession, acquiring a profession, is something that transcends simply choosing a way to make a living. Really, when one has a profession, let's say a medical doctor, an economist, an architect, you are an architect not 6 hours a day, you are an architect 24 hours a day. Even in your sleep, you are still an architect. It's not just the hours you use for work. Is all your identity is impacted by this. This means that choosing a profession is something very important. And since here there are many young people, I address the young people here and the parents of the young people, which are influential on what young people do. And there could be a lot of anguish and a lot of sleeplessness on the matter of choosing a profession, especially if one has to do it very young. But in fact, because in choosing a profession, you are choosing an identity. But in fact, I would argue that it doesn't make, that this fact doesn't make the choosing of profession a more complicated matter, but an easier matter. Why? Because how can you really afford not to follow your passion if you have to live with it all the hours of the day? It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. If you should follow your heart, you should follow your passion, you should follow your dream. And otherwise, you will be miserable all your life, and you will be bored all your life. And on top of that, you will not be a good professional. And look, making a living, empirics tells us that if you are passionate about something, you end up finding ways of making a living with it. Perhaps you have to be a bit flexible, perhaps you should not be a maximizer of your income, but people do adequately when people follow their passion. So do that and convince your parents that that's what you should do. To take this thing out of this last remark, let me say that it is normal at 17 years old to have not one, but several passions. And perhaps we have to decide too early which path, which road we take, but things can be corrected. And we have seen an example today with Mr. Rimbaud of a change of direction. Things can be corrected. The same way that I say to the 17-year-old, follow your passion, I will say to the 25-year-old, abandon this road that you don't like, and take another. Probably your previous profession will also help you. At that age, you can still make a change. I will not go into what's the threshold of age. In what I had written, I had put 30 years. I don't know at which age Mr. Rimbaud changed course, but it's totally all right. I have a very good American friend, an economist, a very successful economist, that started his career as a musician, and in fact, he was a French horn player in the Orchestra of Barcelona for a number of years. But at some point, he switched economics, and he has been very successful in economics. So don't anguish too much. The road not taken can be retaken. Thank you.